our cozy jam sesh. Dr. Monica, Dr. Erica here, and we are so excited to share with you some things to expect when you're just beginning the REV journey. As you know, this process is very, very different. It could be very different from what you've ever done before, or maybe this is kind of similar to things you've done in the past, but regardless, we want to share with you what to expect over the next few weeks. Okay, Erica, so what would you say to people of what they can expect in these next few weeks?
That's such a funny question because I think people want to know, when is this going to go away? What should happen?
Exact.
Yeah, exact. And I'm like, the body doesn't really work like that. The body kind of has its own timeline, but what I tell people all the time, and this is from like years of seeing people from like chronic illness to people that are just looking for a little bit more in life, it's like the journey can be so different for everybody based on where they're at. So I tell people change is the name of the game, because it's like if these things have been going on for a long time, they're going to take a second to slow down. And the way that the body processes that, the way the nervous system processes that is quite literally out of our control. People ask me like, does my body know what to do next? And I'm like, your body doesn't need to know, it doesn't, your nervous system knows what to do. I can't predict that for you, but what I can predict is that over time, things are going to be changing. Whether it's less frequency, more frequency, different intensities, your body starts shifting. And I don't know if you've witnessed that with people, but like when people ask me that, I feel like I'm kind of just like, we will see. and I like to plant the seed of change for them.
And I think in our culture, it's this quick fix mentality of like, okay, I'm coming in to see a physician, this is what I have going on, and this is what I want done. You know what I mean? So I want gone in a week's time. And like she said, that's not necessarily how the body works. So what we're looking for, especially in, I would say even the first few days, is for something to be different. Like she said, we're looking for change. So a lot of people will, follow up with them the next day after their very first session, and we'll be like, okay, how are you doing? How'd you sleep last night? Are you feeling the same, different, worse necessarily? And a lot of people will just say, some people are, I feel completely different. Some people are just like, I just feel a little different, is what they really say. And so even that little bit of feeling a little different is exactly what we're looking for, because that means your system is responding perfectly, beautifully, and you're moving in the right direction. So I would just say over the next few weeks to pay attention and just heighten your self-awareness of like, how am I feeling in this moment? This is what I was experiencing, what led me to REV, which led me to go inwards with my body, but how am I feeling as my day goes on? How is my dynamic with my marriage going, my friends? How am I feeling when I'm at work? Like those little things, and just paying attention to them is gonna be key.
Yeah, and I tell people this too, because it's like you don't see your nail cells changing and growing and regenerating. You don't see your hair cells over time, you do, but that's the momentum within all of this, because in 4.5 years, your body is going to regenerate. So in 4.5 years, you're going to be a different person. And there's a quote out there that says, the thing that we can do that is the least amount of effort will have the most long-term changes, because our body can actually process and integrate that. So when people come in and they want this like miracle experience, I always say like, it's not always long lasting when it happens like that. It's actually the most subtle, small changes that we can do day in and day out, laying on the table for 15 minutes at a time, getting off the table, taking care of ourselves, looking at our lives, like those are actually the miracles. Like that's actually the healing.
I love that so much. And at the beginning, everything's very intentional. All of our phases of care, especially in the first year, is set out for success for you guys to really begin healing, embarking on the journey, and just connecting more deeper to your truest self, which is like what you're meant to do here on this earth. So I would say the first month is, we say you have 45 minutes of table time a week essentially. So usually that's 3 15-minute sessions, or a 30-minute and a 15-minute session. And during that time is when you're in coherence. So most people present to us in a sympathetic overdrive state. I mean, fight or flight all the time. And sometimes we can't even feel that we're in that state because it just becomes our norm. But when we're in that sympathetic freeze state, essentially, we're firing off the stress hormones all the time. Adrenals are burned out, cortisol's up the roof, and we are just not feeling like ourselves. That's a lot of times people just say, I'm just not feeling like myself anymore. So during those 45 minutes of table time, when we're in coherence, we're more in parasympathetic state, that's when we can begin healing, processing, and integrating. And at the beginning, it feels really subtle, and it can feel just like, I slept a little different. Or interesting, my anxiety feels a little lessened, or maybe a little like more intense, but it didn't last as long. Those are the little things we want to look for. And over the next 4 weeks is when you will see things build. So at the beginning, just like with working out, it's like it takes this momentum at the beginning. It's like you're not seeing necessarily the results right away, but then the more you are consistent, you're like, oh, okay, like I got this, you know what I mean? So that's what people say. Usually around weeks 2 to 3 is when they really start to see the bigger changes if they are consistent with that 45 minutes of table time.
I think about like, it takes like 21 days to like ingrain a new habit basically. And with anything like this, like if I meditate for one day, like it may not change my life, but if I meditate for 21 days in a row, like I'm going to start feeling different. And I think that's the point of momentum and slowing down old patterns, because whatever's been going on has been going on kind of on autopilot for a while. And a lot of that's like the 95% like subconscious stuff that just happens and we're triggered. And I think our process starts chipping away at this slowly in a way that we can actually integrate those experiences and make a shift. And I think that's like the whole purpose of it, to slow down this enough that we can start accessing the 5% conscious and making different changes in our life.
I was just talking to someone yesterday. We had an initial consult, and she was, she's been through a lot in her life, especially the last 10 years, like with divorces and just a lot of challenges with her mom, and things with happening with friends. And she's just like, I know this process is going to help me to integrate all these experiences that have built up, which have led me to feel the way that I'm feeling right now, just feeling disconnected. My hormones are off, like I'm not sleeping well. And so she was just like, I'm a little anxious about feeling like that stuff coming up, essentially. And what I said to her is, I love this process so much because it's graceful.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be this like abrasive, like, oh, this is so hard and so scary. Like your body's gonna process what it needs to process in the exact perfect time that's going to be in flow with your life. Again, just the word grace comes up to me as far as how it happens. So just take note of that. And like, so some people, when you're integrating your past and things that you've been through, it can be in dreams. A lot of people are like, I'm just having like really like, not intense is bad, but like intense dreams where I'm remembering them. I know the people in them. Some people are just kind of having blips of memories when they're like, walking or hanging out with their friends. And interesting. So it can be stuff like that, or you aren't even aware of it, because a lot of this is subconscious work that we're dealing with right now. Or on the table, some people are like, oh, I just kind of remembered something. So everything is going to be graceful and in your flow and in your perfect timing.
And it's not like this stuff wasn't there before. Like when people say that, like if they, maybe after the first session, like they're like, I've been having headaches every day and they've been a 5. And then it's been all day for them. And then they'll text us back maybe after the first session. And it's like, I've had a headache for the past 2 hours. That was the worst headache I've ever had. And I'm like, it only lasted 2 hours. And like for me, I'm like, that is slowing down, because it's not like that headache wasn't happening. It was under the surface and it was waiting for you to get close to that threshold so that it could come out. And for us, I'm like, the point of this is to slow these things down so they don't happen anymore. And when they do happen, they come up in a different way and we can start using them.
Yes. Or like someone has a headache or back pain and we're like, well, how's the back pain now? And they're like, well, I mean, it's there, but it's like in a different spot.
Yes.
And we're like, yes, we celebrate all changes, because that's really important for us to know that your system is responding. So even if it's something that it's moving, that's exactly what we're looking for. So again, just tuning into your system as you're going through this process and noting, this is a little different than it was before. That's exactly what we're looking for.
And I just want to maybe close this out too with some of the most common things we hear from people, because I think people like to know that, and maybe what to expect for themselves too. Sleep is one of the biggest things we hear. Sleep changes, and it's like maybe people aren't sleeping too much, or maybe they're feeling really tired whenever they wake up still, and they'll say sleep is changing. And I'm like, well, that makes sense. If we're working with the subconscious, if we're putting you in a parasympathetic state, it would make sense that your body would be doing a lot of healing and integrating integrating while you're sleeping. So sleep changes where people are like, bedtime is like 9 o'clock and 8:30 rolled around and I was just exhausted, or they took a nap in the middle of the day,
Yes,
like after the
lots of naps.
session.
Lots of naps.
It's like, that's our body wanting to integrate. And whenever we say like deep rest for our system, that's what we mean, like taking the time and the space so our bandwidth can actually do what it's meant to do. And then aches and pains are something that happen for people too, where they're like, it will be like, my shoulders feel like I just worked out. And I'm like, they are like, but I work out all the time. Like, why is this going on? And I'm like, it's these small, really intrinsic muscles. It's not just like a bicep and a delt. There's stuff in between here. And all that starts unwinding too whenever our nervous system starts integrating. And that stuff will come up to the surface too. But this is these small intrinsic muscles getting blood flow, nerve flow, everything that they're meant to have, and the rest of our system unwinding because of that. And the third thing I hear so much from people is bowel bladder digestive stuff. And that would make sense too, because if our body is in a sympathetic fight or flight state, like everything gets really tight. Our shoulders, our breathing's changed, our bowel bladder digestion's all tight. And they just went through an immersion of a 15-minute session for a parasympathetic state. Everything releases and lets go. And that's also how our body detoxes. Like, that's how babies detox, is vomiting,
Right, we're like
pooping.
holding on to all these things,
Yes,
and the
yeah.
body finally has the liberty to let go.
Yeah.
And so, are you?
Yeah, that was basically the
Well, I
changes.
was going to say,
yeah.
a lot of this is another one I wanted to say that I actually don't hear from people until I mention it, because they don't think that emotions coming out is a response from this process. And so they're just like, oh, I'm just, I just cried a lot yesterday, or I was really angry, or I felt like intense anxiety. And so that's why I always say, usually at the end of the first week or second week is when some emotions can start to flood the system. And so emotions are energy in motion. So when we have all these pockets of unintegrated tension patterns, essentially, they're holding in the body, and emotions are holding with that. And so when you begin to process, that's when those emotions finally have the liberty to move in the body. And so that can come out crying, it can come out just feeling like rage, but it's not going to last. So just know that, again, that's a shift that we're looking for, and that's a good sign that things are moving in the body. So to just trust in the process and know that it's happening. In this first month, our intention is to, like Dr. Erica said, to slow down these patterns that have been running for decades, years, months. So that's why we want those 45 minutes of table time, so that when we enter into the next 3 months, that's when we're going to be entering into the rewire, when we can begin to expand your capacity, expand your bandwidth. And that's where people who've had decades of anxiety. I think every stage is juicier. It gets juicier. So the next phase is even more exciting, because you see the even bigger changes, because you are consistent, and it's that snowball effect to where we can enter into the optimizing towards the end of the year, which is that sustainable healing. So your set point in life is different than it ever was before, and you will never go back to where you started right now, essentially.
Yeah. So if you're watching this video, you're probably already a client under REV and maybe already going through these changes yourself. I hope this fills in the gap between maybe what you're experiencing and what we offer here. If you're not a current client, we would love to support you. This is what we do. We help people regenerate, we help people heal. And a really good resource would be our website, revoptimalliving.com, our Instagram. We post content there daily about health and healing. And if nothing else, share this video with a friend, like, follow, subscribe. We're excited to create some more content for you guys.